fellow WFPer. um, Welcome to part one of what is going to be a 4-session webinar series through Movement Voter Project called Digital Organizing. And we're going to get started on that right now. So I'm with New Media Mentors, and our whole thing is teaching webinars on digital strategy, which meant that when COVID hit and that became a really required thing for everybody, we just got super busy. And so I've been incredibly thankful to be able to bring in some amazing organizers with experience beyond my own in different areas to be able to bring in and join us. But yeah, this is part of the work that New Media Mentors does all the time year round, and that's lead online webinars and digital skills, cultural organizing, digital strategy. We have something coming up on graphics soon, online fundraising, you name it. And who the heck am I? I am program director at New Media Mentors. I also am co-founder of Organizing 2.0, which some of you may have been to back in April, which is usually in person, but this year online, digital strategy conference. My own background in organizing is in doing digital predominantly in the labor movement, but also for Make the Road Action and Make the Road New York. So sort of being in the worker organizing and community organizing spaces, and I am based in Brooklyn.
Hi everyone, my name is Jamesia Gray. My friends and people who love me call me Jam. My pronouns are they and she. I've been organizing for over a decade. I got my start in policy work. I'm based out of Florida. I'm a 6th-generation Floridian, and I started doing digital data work in 2014. On the screen, I just have some logos of groups that I've currently work with, and may be a member of and do the same. So both and yeah, I'm just super excited to be here with you all and join you on this 4-course arc.
So some guidelines on how we're using Zoom today. The chat function is going to be really active. We're going to keep an eye on it. That would be a good place to ask questions. And if we don't immediately answer your question, it is because we are going to get to it at another point, not because we do not care. We are also going to be asking you guys some questions, and you'll be answering some of those in chat, but there also are going to be some interactive pieces that Jam set up where people will be able to type directly onto the PowerPoint we're sharing. But folks are going to be on mute for this, just because whenever people are not on mute, somebody's going to have their dog start barking and there'll be an echo. It's just the fact of Zoom. You've all been in it. You know how that goes. We're going to be sharing a handout at the end of this that is going to help you put together your own email plan. I encourage folks to take a look at that and check it out. And then I'll be seeing you on Thursday. Same bat time, same bat channel. Jamesia will be leading the major conference of the year during this time, so it'll just be me driving solo at that time. But I'll see you back again at noon on Thursday for more of a deep dive into social media. Regardless of all of this, though, MVP has set up some office hours, meaning that there will be a time where Jam and I will be online and in a Zoom room, and you guys can just drop in and just ask us questions. And that can be everything from literally like looking with you in the back end of your Facebook page if you want, or whatever you want to spend that time in asking us questions. And that's going to be from 2 to 3 ET September 4th. And there'll be another time we're also going to set up. We'll figure out that date. That'll be later in September. So let's get started. These workshops are going to be 70 minutes each, and then we'll have the workshops, office hours, and I'll also be inviting folks to join a closed Facebook group where you can do things like get each other's opinions on your work and get feedback from others. I know a lot of the time we can be one of the only people at our organization doing digital, and everybody's wearing so many hats. And so getting other folks who are trying to do digital work to take a look at stuff can be really important, especially if you're trying to understand if something is going to make sense to folks who aren't already inside your group or inside your issues. So I encourage folks to get in there. Today we're starting with a conversation around how to think about email best practices, and we're going to begin to look at how to evaluate how your emails are doing. But let's start by coming up with a shared definition of organizing.
Yeah, so we're going to be defining organizing as a practice aimed at helping people create the social movements and political organizations necessary to wage campaigns and win power. And so essentially, we organize for power, not just for the hell of it. We're organizing so we're able to do what it is we say we want to do and what we believe in. And so, next slide. In terms of digital organizing, how we are defining it is the exact same way, because digital organizing is organizing. We're just using all of our digital assets to not just duplicate what we're already doing on the ground, but also amplify our work. And so I really want to be clear when I say digital organizing isn't a traditional comm strategy, and that digital organizing isn't just a social media manager. It's strategy, thought, and timing that goes into digital organizing, which will make your campaign successful or make your digital presence very vibrant in all the things that you want it to be. And so I really want to drive home that digital organizing is not magic. Digital organizing is organizing just in a digital space, in a landscape. And so we're going to do that by using digital assets. And today we're going to talk about email and how that, like, honestly, email is the GOAT of digital organizing. And so that's what we're going to talk about today.
And I just want to say that the most talented digital organizers I've ever worked with are all folks whose background is in organizing. I'm really thankful that I got to do like traditional organizing before digital even became a thing, at least for a little bit. Because the skills that you guys have at talking with people are the same skills that you're going to need to talk with people effectively online. So we start this series by talking about email, because email is the most direct tool you have to communicate with people online. Social media is incredibly important, and I'm spending a whole day basically talking with you about it later this week. But what we really like about email is you can send the emails to a group, and you're not really sitting there with an intermediary deciding who can get what. And one of the things I've emphasized to groups, especially during the COVID period, is that email isn't just about you sending emails to other people. It's also about you reading the responses they send you. A lot of times, people don't really look at the default info at my organization's name, reply at my organization's name. They're not really looking at the inbox unless it's their personal inbox. And you can't really have two-way communications if you're doing that. And one of the things that makes email so powerful is that you're going to be able to, like, anybody can respond to your email, and you can take a look and actually engage in that conversation with them, not just have it be one direction. Oh, I animated that to flash. I like it. So I would love to hear, what are the kinds of emails your organization are frequently sending? Do you guys send newsletters? Do you send digital action alerts? Do you send like health and safety information? Are you sending fundraising asks? Throw that in the chat. I want to see. I know that some groups are big believers in newsletters. Somebody says newsletters and organizational updates. I think that for a lot of folks, this is a time where we're pivoting to making sure that everything is starting to go through email. Take action emails, emails with online actions, fundraising, newsletter functions, events, newsletters. So a whole rig range. And good, I'm glad to see some folks are doing email fundraising emails, because that's really an important part of fundraising right now, especially. Cool. Well, no matter what kind of email you're sending, you want to start by always having a goal in mind for that particular email that you send before you send it. And you shouldn't have like 50 different goals for a particular email you send, because then you're going to get your message confused and your email is going to start to get really long. You want to be able to ask and answer the question of, what is your goal? Is it to ask people to support your organization through doing a particular task? Is it to drive or demonstrate grassroots support for your mission by having people share things on social media or sign a petition, and to get people to turn out to an event, online or off? To give them information, which like could be stuff around what COVID procedures folks are taking care of, where you live, for example. Then you also can send emails for persuasion. I think for a lot of us right now, that persuasion might be getting people who are infrequent voters to commit to vote. That's another form of doing outreach, to get people changing their mind. when you're sending emails, there's another question, which is who are you sending it to? Are you sending it to everybody whose email address you have? Or are you sending it to just a segment of the emails that you have access to? Sorry, I need to move this panel around. Hold on. Where are you? Oh, there we go. And knowing who you're going to be sending an email to should impact what you send, because you're not going to talk to your like deep membership, your longstanding members who are like ride or die for your organization. You're not going to talk to them the same way you're going to talk to somebody whose email address you just got, you know, during a canvas, or that you just got from a list sign up. These are different goals and different levels of commitment with folks. And so, wait, yeah, I accidentally skipped a slide. So how are we going to be able to send emails to some people and not everyone? Take it away, Jam.
We're going to use CRMs. And what the hell is CRM? CRMs actually came from the corporate world, and they were originally called customer relationship manager, but inside of progressive movements where we're doing the Lord's work, they're actually called constituent relationship managers. And the key word in there is relationship manager, which is really fancy to say list manager, right? And so I think it's also important that I say that all CRMs aren't created equal, and you're probably already using a CRM and you didn't know it. So Van is a CRM, Action Network is a CRM, and MailChimp is a CRM. And so let me just pause for a second. Oh, screen share, here it is. Yes. Uh-oh. Oh,
do I need to do it instead of you? Oh,
no,
you got it. Okay.
I think it's right here. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is drop in the chat a link to this slide deck, and I want for all of you to meet me on slide 16. And my question to you is, knowing now that a CRM is just a list manager, I want to know, what CRMs are y'all using? What's coming up in your work? Like, what do you have experience with? Even if you use a different CRM at a different org or at a different lifetime, what was it? And I want for us to co-create this list together. And so we're going to do this until about 12:19, and I'll count down at the last 10 seconds. So everybody, please join me on slide 16 to write in all of the CRMs that you have experience with. What list managers have you used? What list managers are you currently using? And I started off and I put Van in there for everyone.
I think the very oldest one I ever used was back in 2005, and it was called Kintera with a K. I don't know if there's any old timers in here like me who remember that one. A lot of folks on Action Network. That's what I use the most myself.
I see some Salsa. I haven't actually seen Salsa in a while.
Yeah.
BSD. I haven't seen digital in a while either. Is all of it called Every Action now? Or, oh, somebody's an Action Kit. That's like fancy for pros. I like it. Little Green Light. I'm gonna have to look that one up. Let's count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it looks like a lot of folks have experience with Action Network, Google Sheets, Airtable, Little Green Light, MailChimp, Constant Contact, Bronto, Salsa, BSD, and Action Kit. Now, if you're not familiar with all of these, or at least a couple of them, and maybe if you're familiar with two, you'll know that each of these CRMs are different and they can do different things. So all CRMs aren't created equal. And there is no, this is the best CRM. It really depends on your organization. It depends on your budget, and it depends on what you're doing. If you're strictly running emails and you have no intentions on running tests, MailChimp is fine. MailChimp is just A-okay. But if you want to run some A/B tests or you want to try out some new things and get a bit fancy, maybe you want to upgrade to Action Network. And so thank you all for co-creating this list and allowing for us to see where you are. And if you didn't get to write on the slide, please drop in the chat box, what is a CRM that you're using? So we just co-created a list of the CRMs that you're using. Now I want to know, how are you using those CRMs? Please put it in the chat box. If you feel the urge to come off mute and say how you're using that, this is an invitation to do so. And I've said this before, but all CRMs are not created equals. Equal functions can range from sending emails only to testing to segmenting, which is separating out your list. You should never be sending an email to all of your list unless it's like a newsletter or updates from your org. You should always be segmenting. Some CRMs allow for you to create targeted lists, right? Some allow for you to create petitions. Some allow for you to have event pages and merge it with your other CRM and other digital tools you're using. And so I would really like us to take the next 2 minutes to see how we're using, how you're using your CRM.
I would love to hear if folks are using SMS. That's text message platforms, and which ones you're using. And if you're using two-way, where like people can respond to your text messages, or just broadcasts where you're just sending texts and like that's it. Because those are CRMs as well. And sometimes those CRMs are connected to your email and sometimes they're not.
This is true. So Renee Sadler says eCampaigns all in segmented. So I'm assuming that means you're sending emails via eCampaigns, Renee? Yes, awesome. Yeah. And Lauren says mostly only emails, interested in expanding what you're doing over email. We're doing SMS through Hustle. I love Hustle. Yes, peer-to-peer. Erica says at Races, we are using mobile calls and Hustle for peer-to-peer. It looks like a lot of people are using Hustle for peer-to-peer and mobile causes for broadcast SMS. Nice, nice, nice. Thank you all for sharing and letting us know how you're using your CRMs and what you're using to run your SMS programs. So why do we use CRMs? CRMs they are super powerful in terms of our organizing tools and just how we can track one-on-ones online, just how we can attract in-person events that we're having on the ground. We can do the same thing to track conversations that we're having online. If you know anything about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's initial race for Congress, they tracked every single conversation from Instagram DMs to Twitter messages to comments on Facebook and Instagram. They track those conversations just how we would track them offline. We're gonna, like I mentioned earlier, digital organizing isn't magic. We're literally replicating what we're doing on the ground in the digital space. And so CRMs are more powerful organizing tools. Just sending mass emails through your personal email because you can track data on who opens them. You can also track where folks came from if they're signing on to your petition or your event. Like CRMs are just great. And they make your job a lot easier. Imagine having to send a personalized email manually to 100 people. That is daunting. But CRMs make it easy for us to do that with plug and plays. And back to you.
So some of the important things that you might segment your list on would be zip code. You want to know, like, where do they live? That might impact what kind of message you're going to send them. Certainly back when we did things in person, zip code would dictate who you invited to what. But even in the digital online only space, knowing where people live is important for making distinguishments about who gets invited to what from how. We also like to tag people whether they're donors or not, because you're trying to begin to expand your online fundraising capacity. And you can send donors a message asking for more money versus for people who haven't given yet, you can maybe do more of a pitch about why to give in the first place. If you're a group that works on a lot of different issues, it can be good to track who's interested in which issues so that you're communicating the most with, environmental justice folks can get the environmental justice focus emails. People who came to you guys in a personal crisis situation maybe wouldn't get certain emails that folks who are coming into you for more of an activist situation might be looking for. If you're working with a coalition, you can identify who here is a member of your organization versus who is an ally of your organization. For a lot of community-based organizations, the definition of who is an organization member versus who is an ally is really important. I'm not a member of New York Communities for Change, but I'm a supporter of New York Communities for Change. And another key thing is ask people what language they speak. If I could add like just a couple of things to any online sign-up forms or in-person sign-up forms you might be circulating, a place to track what language somebody speaks is incredibly important. What other things might you segment your list based on? Oh, can you hit next? I'd love to hear from folks in the chat. So you can see a screenshot of my own, I was using Action Network. You could see I was trying to send an email to people who went to one of my webinars, and I wanted to exclude people who spoke Spanish because this email I was sending was English only. And then I was going to send a different email to people who spoke Spanish, because it's better to have separate emails rather than having both languages in one email. It can be a lot of scrolling. If you don't know what language somebody speaks in your data, it doesn't exist, then send the 2-language email. But maybe you could send a poll in your next email to ask people what their language preference is, for example. But the reason I would use a CRM would be because I can send an email just to the targeted group of people who went to my webinar and who were not Spanish speakers, and then send them that email. I couldn't do that if I wasn't using a CRM. Okay, you can go to next. Timing. When are you sending this email? We need to be sending emails to folks in a rapid fashion when it comes to breaking news and events. And that sometimes means that something we might send might go out without having as many people revisioning it and every department sign off before we send it, because in this like fast-paced reality, sometimes it's not possible. It's often more important to get out a communication than it is to have every single typo under the sun caught, because people are looking for guidance from you and information from you quickly. Obviously, you want to proofread things as much as possible, but I've seen too many groups sit on emails for too long for like every single department to weigh in on something, and then they miss their moment to jump into a public conversation or to get a petition out, to be time sensitive and having people call their electeds because they waited too long to send that email. You want to email people when you need help. Maybe there's a public deadline for filing comments with a board of elections you need to send out. Maybe you need help to get people to come to a thing or give money at a certain time. There's a holiday coming up called Labor Day. Maybe there's things you want people to do with you on Labor Day, or a message you want to send about workers on Labor Day. And the other piece about when is like literally what time of day. So when I was organizing low income bank workers, we knew that they were working from like 6 to 5 p.m. basically, depending on their time zone, and that they were not allowed to check their email during work hours. So we were going to email them right after they ended their work day, which is when they'd pull out their cell phones and look at their email. With Make the Road, with our community members who maybe didn't back then at least necessarily have access to internet while they were at work, so we might have been doing things like sending an SMS message during certain hours versus an email. And for some members of the list, we might send messages only on weekends, because if somebody isn't checking email throughout the day because of the nature of their job, then send them the message during the times of day that they are. And a starting point for thinking about that could be literally asking your members, when do you check your email? What time of day is it? And another way we can sometimes get a sense of this is by looking at their social media accounts and seeing when they're active. I'm not always checking email when I'm tweeting, but it's a safer bet that if I'm going to be tweeting something, I'm probably also looking at my email. So hopefully your social media friends with at least some of the members or some of the folks who you want to be in communication with. And you can base your best guess on what time to send emails by looking at when they've posted to Twitter, when they've posted to Facebook. Also consider what time you want them to act. So if I'm going to send an action alert to my list about calling their congressperson, I'm not going to send that to them at 5 p.m. at night, because their congressional office will be closed. I'm going to send that to them during the beginning of the day when their office might be open. I get a question about what is the right amount of email to send almost more than anything else. I have found that for most organizations that are community groups, we're not sending enough email. And that's generally because we are incredibly freaking busy, and who has time to do this? I would say that if you're worried that your group is sending too many emails, you probably aren't. We all know some of those lists that we're on, DCCC, for example, that maybe are sending you 50 emails a day. None of you guys are doing that. You probably don't have the capacity to send an email every day, right? Knowing if you're sending enough email, it's possible to send too little email. For example, if you send people an email in July and you haven't sent them anything yet, they might forget who you are between now and then. You need to be in people's inboxes long enough and frequently enough for them to remember who you are. And if you ever are sending too many emails, you'll know, because people will be unsubscribing from your list. Again, it's extremely unlikely that any of you are sending too many emails. But when you're emailing people, they have to understand why you're emailing them then. Why is this message going out to me then? And I think that's one of the problems with newsletters sometimes, is that they lack a momentum, energy, or urgency. And so people kind of tune them out because it doesn't feel time sensitive enough. Next. One thing that's changed during COVID is that people are opening their emails over a longer period of time. Groups who are tracking it find that maybe they send an email Monday and somebody will actually open it on Friday. It used to be if your email wasn't getting opened like within hours of when you sent it, it wasn't getting opened. That is no longer true. There might be different reasons for that. And actually, I'd be curious if you have thoughts about why that is. Throw those in chat. But again, I want to emphasize that each email list is different. How a group you're at now behaves could be different than another one. There might be a difference between how your active members interact with your list and how the new people who you've just added interact with it. If you really don't know when, like if you're sitting here saying, yeah, but like, Ilana, when the hell should I send an email? I don't even know. Try Wednesday. See how it goes. If people aren't opening your Wednesday email, try Saturday. You can mess around with it and see when people are opening your emails the most. And you can go, if you're using a CRM, you can go into your email list history and see the emails that you sent in the past, when were they opened the most, and do that again. Next slide. Process, woof, that can be a big question. Who is writing it, who is setting up and deploying it, and who approves it? You know, the first draft for a lot of emails that I sent when I was with Make the Road was that they would, some of the information, if it was about an action, that would be coming from the organizer. We would say to the organizer, if you were communicating to our membership about this housing rally you're doing, like what would you want them to know? And they would just send me some notes, and then I would turn that into an actual email blast, because the organizer is the closest, and that might be you, is the closest to the issue that you're working on. But I don't expect them to like know everything about email strategy or whatever. So those of you who are in this, maybe you're doing the writing, but maybe you're pulling in the bullet points about what the issue is from the organizer. And then having a process for setting up and deploying email and who has to approve something before it goes out is important to document that on paper so that there is no questions about who needs to see something before you hit send. You don't want that process to get in the way of you being able to be timely in sending your emails. Next. How big is your email list? I'm curious. If you don't know off the top of your head, that's totally fine. You can ballpark it, throw it in chat. You can also have that chat just go to me if you want. I mean, to me and Jamesia, or to everybody. Email lists come in all shapes and sizes. And one of the points I would emphasize is that you can have an email list of 30,000 people, and if they never do what you're asking them to do, then that's not a particularly good email list. You could have an email list of 500,000 people, and if they're not the people you're seeking to mobilize, then that's not a very good email list either. Your email list of 300 people who are doing what you ask them to do could be the most powerful email list in your world. Jamesia said one of her lists is over 60K and the other list is 500K. These are nice, big, robust lists. Somebody's 140K. These are big. You guys are managing some really big lists. But I'd say if that doesn't sound like you, if you're making, you know, maybe it's a couple hundred people. If those people are in real relationship with you guys, if they're responding to your emails and doing what you're asking, then that's a powerful email list. 2K, 1,000 to 5,000. Let's hit next. So we're going to talk about best practices a little bit. Let's get started on what those look like. I may have mentioned before that people need to know why you're emailing them. And they have to understand what's in it for them. And that doesn't have to be like, we're giving you a free t-shirt. It can be, what are you giving them access to that they want to see? Maybe it's information. Maybe it's giving them a meaningful way to get involved in their community. Right now, a lot of the ways that people have been able to get involved in their community activism are not happening, and people are desperate for ways to be able to help and show support. And your list could be the thing that's telling them to get folks to do the census, to help them, to help their neighbors, to do outreach in their building. So giving, and also your newsletter can be how they found out about things in their community that they wouldn't hear about otherwise. But you have to be able to say before you send that email, what is in it for the folks on this list? Why do they want to read it? Because they don't care why you want them to read it. They want to have, they're going to have their own reason. And they have to understand why you're sending it right now. I think that's a challenge with newsletters, is that sometimes, like, because it's Wednesday isn't necessarily a good reason to send an email. Like, it maybe needs to be because we have something we need to tell you about. And that's not to say you shouldn't have newsletters, but to think about how to keep them timely and with a sense of urgency. Next. Tone is important. You want to be authentic and approachable. You want to sound like somebody in your community. You don't want to go into like formal business speak and sound like a robot or sound over formal. I mean, you also don't want to sound like, you know, you're a grown-up trying to sound like a cool kid. You know, how do you do, fellow kids? Like, you want to sound like your organization sounds. Like, how would you talk to people if you were talking with them in person? And you also want to have the right tone for the list and for the moment. You know, sometimes is not the time and space for humor, but there's plenty of times that are. And the humor can be a great way to connect with people emotionally and to keep people interested in your lists.
And I'll just add, there is no right or wrong tone, because nobody knows your list, org, and your people better than you do.
Yeah, thank you. Next. Here's a screenshot of my inbox a while back. When you're writing an email, the first barrier that you have to people opening it is the subject line that they see. Because even before they decide to click on an email, they're going to see a subject line. And experts will tell you that you're going to need to spend about 50% of the time writing your email thinking about what that subject line should be, because it's that important. No matter how good the inside of your email is, if that outside of your email isn't good, they're not going to even look at it. If you're using, most CRMs will let you see the gray text that's underneath the subject line in the screenshot? Thank you. That's called the preview text. And on a lot of platforms, you can control what's in it. And so you should always think about that strategically. So I want to hear from you guys, which of these subject lines are you the most likely, you personally, not a hypothetical person out there in the world, but which of these subject lines would you be most likely to open? Throw that in the chat. For me, it's the Daily Kos email, somebody said. That Daily Kos email says, sign the petition, these banks must stop, fine, and you can't see the rest of it because it's looking on my cell phone, which, mind you, is how a lot of people will be looking at their email. It's on their cell phone. Sign the petition. What other emails do folks might sign on? What email do you, let's take a Daily Kos email. A lot of folks feeling like, you know, this is something I can tell you, is that Daily Kos is doing a ton of work in their emails and in their email strategy. So I get on a lot of email lists that are popular just so I can see what they're doing and learn from them. And given Daily Kos is a news website whose like whole existence is based on their email list in some ways, that's not a bad guess that their emails are going to be pretty good because they're focusing a lot on it. So I'm going to like sit there and try to learn what I can from them. About last night, somebody said is a good, yes, the about last night email was 100% the email that I opened first. I also opened the thank you Ilana email right away. People can sometimes do thank you and then the person's name email in a spammy way, but I actually know who Carl is. So I was like, okay, I spotted my name. I know who Carl is. I want to see what happened last night. I think of the emails in here, the one that I think is least likely to be opened is the one that said RWV newsletter, because I don't remember what that is. Like, I don't know what RWV stands for. I don't remember, and newsletter, like, why am I opening this particular newsletter at this particular time? Yes, John Hassan Yildiz said that he likes the About Last Night email because it has the urgency and also it's casual. Yeah, it has both of those things together. So definitely like thinking about making sure that your email send is coming from a person is helpful as well. Next.
Okay, and I'll also add
Please.
that there are brands that have really great email programs. For me, I love Glossier and Fashion Nova because sometimes Glossier will send me a photo of a cute puppy and it's like, oh, I'm just making sure you're cheered up today. Here's 15% off. And then I'm
I
going,
opened that.
yeah, right? So like you open up these emails and so like it's also I love to follow branding email programs because they also have a really big team and then their content is diverse. Like, I don't know if you all were spammed, is what I'm calling it, during the top of COVID-19 with all of these, we care about you emails, but making sure that folks know you care about them is super duper important. So all of your emails don't need to have an ask. They don't need to have a call to action, but it can just be an acknowledgement. It can just be an update. It can be a pick me up. But 9 times out of 10, I will always open up Glossier emails and Fashion Nova emails, and they take a lot of my money, but they have email programs. And
Well,
so
I want to take, yeah, sorry. Can we take Erica's question, which was, she'd love to know if it makes a difference who is sending the email. Like, is it better for the same person to be sending all the time so the name becomes familiar? What do you think?
I think you have to test it. So if there's somebody in your org who has a digital presence, like some of my friends will call me a micro influencer. So like my name could go out on the Movement for Black Lives email thread and people will open it up because they know who Jamesia Gray is. It's less likely that people will open up an email from somebody they don't know. But if you're just starting out, your list is new, your org is new, your campaign is new, and then repetition and consistency will be your best friend. But if you've already had a program or you're inherited a program or you just came onto an org, I would test it out to see like what is your average open rate now and who are those emails coming from, and and then test it out. What if I sent it from myself? What if you sent it as you, Erica? Would people open it up because they want to hear from new voices? So it all depends on testing. And that's like my answer. You got to test it.
And Erica, you're pretty famous, so probably good to have it come from you. But actually, one other thought, speaking of that though, is like if you are getting new people joining your list and they're coming through a particular organizer, have the welcome email they get come from that organizer. So like track that information. Even if that particular organizer is not going to be the main person sending them email moving forward, at least the welcome email might come from the person who they spoke to first, because that can help. Let's go to the next slide. Drafting 10 subject lines before you're hitting send is something I try to do. And you're going to be like, oh my God, Ilana, I don't want to think about that. But you're going to just brain dump this. And I swear to you, each subject line will get better than the next. Sometimes the first subject line I come up with is the best, but very often it's the 10th one where I'm like, yeah, this is the subject line. And then we'll talk a bit about testing later, but if you're really torn between two, or if you have a pretty big email list, you can do a test of one versus the other. Oh, Erica, I like your subject lines with the emojis in them. They look good. But I think because like I said, writing a good subject line is so important, you're gonna have to think about, put some creativity into what you're gonna have that subject line be, and to just literally write them down. And one of the things I think folks could try to do in the Facebook group I'm gonna add, that we're gonna invite folks to join, is go and send a list of subject lines to folks in the group and be like, hey, what do you think about some of these? Oh, somebody suggested subjectline.com is also great when you narrow down your options. I'm not familiar with subjectline.com. Tell me more in the chat. Let's do the next slide.
Hi, all right. So this is another activity where I am going to invite you all to meet me on page 31. And I actually want you to put on here a list of subject lines that you thought were the best subject lines you ever saw, and you immediately clicked on that email. So what are some subject lines you received that made you open up that email? We are on slide 31.
Renee wrote that subjectline.com gives you the you put an email, sorry, you put a subject line in it and it gives you the likelihood of the open rate and score. I freaking love that. I'm going to start using that immediately. Thank you for suggesting that resource.
Awesome. Thank
That's
you.
really cool.
And so, yeah, folks, everyone, you can start typing in the subject lines that you thought were really great that you received.
I remember everybody talking about, there was an email that was sent back in, I don't know, 2008 from Obama. The subject line was just, hey. And everybody started saying, oh my God, we're going to start just having emails that we send with the subject line, hey. But people didn't necessarily remember that like their email sender isn't Obama. And something that works for Obama might not necessarily work for your organization executive director who's not famous. So always take that with a grain of salt, but that's definitely one of the most memorable subject lines I've seen.
Yeah. I know I will always open up happy birthday subject lines because that signals to me either something free or a discount.
Oh, that's a good point. You guys are going to get to see one of my favorite subject lines in an email very shortly that I will be sharing.
And I can't tell if you cannot, for some reason, get into the slide deck to write down your favorite subject line. I want to encourage you to put it in a chat box, and I will copy and paste it over for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it looks like you can type.
Okay.
Ooh, here's an interesting question. So somebody's subject line they put is free, oh, sorry. Bernie Sanders, I have a personal request, definitely. That's a hot one. This email has a picture of Bailey, the dog of Elizabeth Warren, and an important ask. That is great. Free clearance. I think that sometimes the word, I know that numbers and sometimes the word free can sometimes trigger spam filters and might get your email flagged because a lot of marketers will use some of those terms. But I also still see groups use it anyway. So I don't know, like Jam, what's your mileage on that question?
I mean, I don't, where are the questions being sent? I don't even see them. But to answer the question, I would honestly stay away from anything that'll trigger my email going into the spam box. And when you're sending emails to, and this is something I found out, I think a year ago, to Google-based emails, if they don't open up your last 5 emails, or let's say you send out 2 emails a month and they don't open up any of those emails that month, Google will filter your email out of their primary inbox. And so that is something to keep in mind. And I also stay away from words like free, only because marketing companies and bigger corporations use it a lot. And that automatically gets your email filtered into someone's promotion or spam box.
Oh, and here's a good example, actually. So the Bernie Sanders email, 2,000 per person per month, is Bernie can send an email with that subject line because he has enough email inbox interactivity. But if I'm sending it to a new list, I'm probably going to get tagged as spam. And we're going to talk more about spam in a little bit and spam filters. But I'm probably going to get tagged as spam because it has an amount of money in the subject line. Which is also an interesting question for those of us who are doing maybe minimum wage increase campaigns, whether or not putting that $ in the subject line might make stuff not go into people's inboxes if you're saying 515 or something.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next one. But definitely getting on the email lists of some really like strategic good organizations to learn from them is a good idea. So when you're sending an email blast, you always want to send a test email, and you want to look at it on both your phone and your desktop. A ton of your folks are only looking at it on their cell phone. Now you can see this screenshot at right is what this email from Credo, like a phone email, looked like on my cell. And I want to call attention to the fact that the image, which is a boring image, took up a lot of space, and that the image has literally the same information as the title of the email and the subject line. So that's a kind of a waste of space. And if I see a test email like this, I'm going to be like, oh, wait, I don't need to have a subject line and a title and a graphic that all say literally the same thing. I can squish it down by having fewer things. Or maybe this image is is too big. You're not going to notice that stuff unless you're literally like looking at that email on your cell phone. And most of your email list is probably reading your email on their cell phone. If your email platform doesn't have a mobile-friendly template, you need to deal with that right now. I am not capable of messing with your HTML or CSS to be able to fix that for you. Like you're gonna have to go to the platform that you work for and get one of their templates or have someone do it for you. But do not try to do this yourself, it's complicated. But it also is pretty standard and should not cost much money. I think most of the default wrappers in the CRMs you have will be mobile friendly at this day and age. Let's go to the next slide. So in organizing, we have something called an ask, right? Which is when you are asking somebody to do a particular thing. So the ask could be vote for my candidate, come to this event, become a member, it's $5 a month. Those are asks. And in emails, the vast majority of emails you send need to have an ask in them. And that ask needs to be at the top of your email, at the middle of your email, if you're having a longish email, and then again at the end of your email. People should not have to scroll through an email in order to find the thing you want them to do. You want it to just be immediately there, immediately clickable. You know, this email has a very clear time-sensitive time frame. It says, like, vote, the House is voting today. That urgency is right there. And the sender is the name of a person from an organization and the organization's name. Like, I might not know who Emma Einhorn is, but I know who Move On Civic Action is. So it's a sender like this that combines a person's name and the organization's name can be helpful. But I see lots of groups just sending stuff from a particular person with their name, like kind of hoping that we think that it's somebody we know and don't think it's an organization email. Jam, are you guys sending emails from like just a person or from a person with a name, with the organization name after it these days?
So we do a mix of both. Sometimes because we just got 2 new national directors. So sometimes we'll say Carissa Lewis, National Field Director, M4BL. And then other times it'll be Jamesia Gray, M4BL, like they know is coming from us. And
cool. But yeah, like I'm looking at this email, if you click on this big image that says today, that button would take you to the petition, to the share, to the graphic they're asking you to share. And the ask in this email is asking people to share something to Facebook. And you can see it right at the top without scrolling. Next slide. Bam. Okay, this is one of my favorite subject lines, which is, think TSA body scans are invasive, just you wait. Yes, that is a Hamilton reference. I haven't even seen Hamilton, but I was aware of this being a Hamilton reference, and so it made me smile. This is an email that has the ask not at the very top, but it is very short. It tells the story very clearly. You can see that they are using bolding. They're bolding lines they want you to see. The banner for the organization is compact and not taking up a ton of space in that wrapper. Oh, to the person who said they have to drop early, don't worry, this is all recorded. We will be sharing this with you. But yeah, I love this email because it is a compelling story. Somebody at one point pointed out that there's a typo somewhere in this. And I would just say that this goes to show, again, like, you need to get that email out. I don't think, is it better to not have a typo? Yeah. Does that typo, unless it's like giving people the wrong date of an action, is that the most important concern? No, it's really not. It's more important to have a compelling email to get it out in a timely way. You can also see if you ever are going to use any kind of links to documentation or other resources in an email, don't have those links be at the top of your email. People are going to click, chances are, at the first link that you send them. So if you think people might want to read some additional information from the New York Times, If you make that the first thing you link to in your email, people are going to just click on that and they're not going to click on your petition. The first link in your email needs to be pointing them to the thing you want them to do. And so if there's any other links you want in there, having them be a footnote, like what this one did, would be the way to include those links. But generally speaking, for most emails, you want to have one ask per email, and all of those links in your email are going to go to one place, because people get overwhelmed by multiple choices and they'll click on random things if you don't. Next slide. I love this because it's easy to scan. It has the sign the petition. It's asks you to do it above the fold. Next slide. And just by the way, we're going to be sharing these, we're sharing these slides with folks. So you can actually like sit there and really read these emails rather than having to just sort of eyeball them as we go through things. I suggest folks go and spend some time looking at them, reading these emails, because they're good and you should see them. So this email made me really happy, and you guys could probably copy a version of this, frankly, for your lists. The subject line is "Outdated tactics just aren't cutting it anymore." And this email is from well before COVID. And in it, my friend Jenny is explaining to people why their organization is doing more work on digital than ever before and asking people for money to fund their digital organizing. This is probably something you're going to ask your list to do. You can totally go and look at Color of Change's this awesome email and like take inspiration from it. As you can see, she's got text bolded. She has a link above the fold, and it really clearly says, you know, victory in Flint is possible if we keep using innovative digital strategies to reach voters, but innovation isn't possible without your support. Donate $25 right now to help us reach Black voters in Flint. I want to give them money. I did give them money. Next slide. Another great email from Color of Change. Just like everybody, if you're not on Color of Change's email list, just get on them. I like learned so much from them. These are 3 screenshots from my cell phone. And so you're looking at this and you're probably like, oh my God, this email is really long, but it's really easily scannable. It's a great fundraising email. One, it says at the front, I'm going to cut to the chase. We're asking you to donate to help defeat Trump, to help defeat Trump-endorsed Roy Moore. Okay, well, say no more. I'm donating to that. Okay, maybe you want a little bit more information. It tells you, oh my gosh, the voter registration deadline is tomorrow. Oh, they're trying to reach new voters, so they need to run these ads before the voter reg deadline. Well, they have these like 3 different links for reach, and they tell you, help reach 5 new Alabama voters before tomorrow's deadline for $10. Help reach 20 for $40. Help reach 50 for $100. So they're doing the math for you of how many voters they can reach for each donation you make. And that is a really compelling fundraising ask. It feels like you know exactly where your money is going to and what exactly it'll be used for. And this was a very successful fundraising email blast for them. And then you could see at the end, at the very end, they say, in short, gave us a rush contribution. So if you end up reading the whole email and you still haven't given, they have that ask one more time at the end. Love this email. Next slide. Graphics. People respond to images of people. Like our brains are literally hardwired to see people's faces and be like, oh, people, I care about them. You have an emotional response of like dopamine, especially with children's faces, also with the faces of pets. We want to have photos in our emails, but only if the photos make sense. Like you don't want it to be super random. You do, like the faces and voices of your members are incredibly important, and you want to use images to communicate, but you don't want to hide any important information in a graphic. I see some groups will have an email, and the body of an email will be a graphic that's basically a flyer about an event, and then the information about that event won't be written in text anywhere. People can't copy and paste that into their calendar or click on that to have that information. Additionally, people who are using screen readers because they're disabled, like will not see that information. So you need to make sure that any information that's in a graphic also has to be in writing in your email. You know, if you have photos from a protest, you can use those photos, like people are in public. You know, obviously there's going to be some discretion that you might have around what kind of photo you're using for what, but I trust that you understand your members. But like if you have photos from a rally that you've done, like you can use those photos. Also, an ask that you might want to have for your list these days could be to have them holding up a protest sign in their home, sending a message, showing a picture of themselves, showing why they care about their community. Have them send you photos to include in your email blasts. I'd love to hear from folks, like what are some images that you've used in emails that you thought were really successful? And put them over here. Let's go to the next slide. So we talked a little bit before about making sure that your email doesn't end up in spam folders. The technical term for that is deliverability. So that's like the industry term. Deliverability means, is your email going to be able to arrive in the inbox of the recipient that you intended to get it and not in their spam folder? You know, the thing is, it's pretty unlikely that folks in this call are literally spamming people. Like, you're probably not finding a random email address and adding it to your contact list. But that's not how other people think about spam. Other people think about spam as, do I remember signing up to get this email address? Do I know why I'm getting this email? There are probably people who have gotten emails from you that they've tagged as spam, even though from a moral standpoint, you have not spammed them. But unfortunately, the way email systems work, if people think you're spamming them, regardless of whether or not you're legally spamming them, those emails are not going to end up in their inboxes. Deliverability means you're sending people emails that they're engaging with, meaning they're opening those emails. And one of the clearest ways to make sure this happens is to have people opt into joining your email list. Like, if you have a sign-up sheet, make sure people know that they're going to be added to your email list, and give them a welcome message when they join your list that says, hey, thank you for participating in our webinar about COVID relief. We're going to be talking with you about important actions to take in your community. Like, literally onboard them. Also, don't send emails with giant images. They can trigger spam filters. And don't send emails with like PDF attachments and other attachments, because those will also end up in people's spam filters. Let's go to the next one. So keeping your email list clean, we use the term hygiene, email list hygiene. Hygiene means that you are spending time to remove emails that are email addresses of people who are not opening your emails ever. Because if you have an email list and most of the people on your email list don't open your emails, that sends a signal to Gmail that people don't care about your emails. And then the people who actually want to get them will not receive them. A lot of funders will ask you metrics like how many people are on your email list. And because of that, a lot of our organizations don't like removing people from their email list, because then it looks like your numbers aren't growing. The reality is, if somebody's not opening your email, they're not actually helping you. If you keep sending somebody that email, then you're going to be flagged as spam. It's going to hurt your deliverability more broadly. One way to sort of split the difference between funders who want to see how huge your list is, but like also taking care of your hygiene, would be to tag people who don't open emails as non-email openers and don't send emails to them. Then if your funder is like, I need to know that your email list is growing, like they can still see that your list is growing, but you won't be damaging your ability to succeed by emailing people who don't want to get it. Additionally, when you get rid of old email addresses, you have a smaller account, which will save your organization money. Like, having a ton of old contact info that isn't accurate anymore is literally costing you money. For most CRMs will charge you by how many names are on it. I also think you should regularly do searches in your CRM for very standard typos. For example, some people might hit the letter GG when they're typing in a Gmail address. So you can do a search in your CRM to see if anybody put @ggmail.com, and then you can go and fix those email addresses to make it be gmail.com. Or somebody could put organization.orf instead of .org. Like, you want to look in we'll be talking a lot more about data in the weeks that come, but keeping an eye out for common typos and fixing them is really good. Somebody mentioned their previous organization never touched their list, but it just existed in their universe. So yeah, you didn't email the people who were old or stale, but you had the data somewhere in case you ever needed it, or in case some funder was ever like, wah, wah, wah about it. But yeah, like sunsetting out emails, addresses that aren't getting opened after maybe 6 months, and really big email lists will do it even more aggressively than that. They'll do it like if you haven't opened an email for a month and a half, they'll sunset you off their list. But maybe to start with, you can say, who hasn't opened an email in 6 months? You can also look at your data, and sometimes you'll be like, wait, Bob isn't opening his emails, but I know Bob is an active member of our organization. And you can contact Bob and be like, Bob, hey, is, have you changed your email address maybe, or maybe stuff is bouncing? Like you can even see if maybe there are people who you want to reconnect with in some different way. A lot of people fail to update their email addresses. They might change job or something, and then you can update it manually. Next slide. Having a successful email program means understanding what you've done before and learning from what you've done before. So I want everybody who's on this call, who's on this webinar, to make a date with themselves. Set up a time next week where you will go and look at your email statistics and see what emails you've sent that performed really well. And then learn from that and say, okay, from these emails where I can see that people really like when we email them about updates from particular community members. Well, I can do that again. I'm going to try to do that again. Let me figure out how to work that into my email plan. Or you can see what was your most successful fundraising email. And if that email was 6 months ago, you could probably send the exact same fundraising email type to your list again with making a few small tweaks, because you can learn from your own successes, learn from your own failures. But you're only going to do it if you put a date on your calendar to spend some time looking at your data. Next slide. So here's a screenshot from the inside of my Action Network account for an email that I sent out to my email list, asking them to check out the webinar that I just did as part of Netroots Nation. And you know, I can look in this data and I can see how many people opened it, how many people clicked on it. And this is a specialized email, right? Because this is an email where I was inviting people to come to a webinar that most people were probably like not going to be able to go to. So having 56 clicks is actually not bad, because most people on my email list were not necessarily going to Netroots Nation. The open rate was about 26%, which is pretty standard for that list right then. And I'm not getting unsubscribes, and I'm not really getting many bounces. That's good. Bounces means you send somebody an email, but it bounces back because their email address, their email box is full. I find that, actually, I'd love to hear the stats from you as well, Jam, but like, I find that for a lot of folks who don't use email a ton as part of their jobs, their email boxes get really full really fast and can start bouncing. And sometimes those folks won't know that their email box is bouncing because like they just don't check on it enough to know that. And in those moments, it could be really important to find out how else can you contact those people. Maybe you need to bring them into your SMS platform and do text messaging to communicate with them.
Yeah, and we also collect social media handles because most of the time people don't really change their handles. And so we can still contact them that way.
Oh, that's really good. I love that. I agree. And here's an important thing to remember. This is true on social media and email as well, but nobody is paying as much attention to your organization as you are, which means that you could send an email blast out to people who might actually want to see it, but maybe it just hit them at the wrong time of day. Maybe the doorbell just rang. Maybe something just happened and they didn't open it. They were depressed that day. There could be a number of reasons. That doesn't mean you can't send it to them again. Now, I'm not going to send people everything multiple times, hammering it away at them till they open it. But sometimes there's something really important that my list needs to know or hear. And so if I send out an email, not a lot of people don't act on it or click on it, I'm going to send them a different version of that email later in the week with a different subject line. 100%. If you're sending people the same information, one, don't send it to people who've already interacted with it. Only send it to people who haven't opened it. And two, have a different subject line, because there's a decent chance the subject line you tried before didn't work for those people. So don't send it again. Send it with a different subject line. But you can send it to your list more than once. You can try a different approach, a different tone, a different time of day. You have an ability to have more than one bite at the apple, because nobody is paying as much attention as you are to what comes in. There's totally been emails that people have sent me before that I really would have wanted to read if it hadn't just hit me at the wrong moment. Next slide. So I want to hear from folks. What are some key takeaways that you've gotten from today? This is also a good space for asking additional questions about things about email that we haven't hit up yet. Jim, I think we have a blank blank interaction slide for that next. Bam. What is that slide? 47? Excellent. I want to hear some key takeaways from folks about what you've learned today. It also could be something you already knew today, but that today really reminded you to think about. It doesn't have to just be stuff that's new. It could be, you know, we knew about this, but this was a good reminder. It could be something where you've already been doing it right and you're like happy to hear that you're doing it right. Or it could be something new that you've learned, but what are some important pieces of information that you want to bring with you after today? I know for me, one of the key takeaways is going to be the person who suggested that website. What was it called? Subjectline.com. I will find it. Subjectline.com. So knowing subjectline.com exists is definitely a good takeaway for me because I did not know that before. Yes, somebody mentioned how important recency is to Gmail filters. Yeah, exactly. Like your email, people's email systems know how often they've opened emails from you or not. And they're taking that into account about whether or not it ends up in the inbox, that's the priority inbox, or the non-priority inbox. I like this one. This is good. Size of the list is important, but not the most important. And this is something you all are going to have to remember as well for social media. If it's the right people, that's more important than how many people it is. If it's the right people and you're getting them to do what you want them to do. Digital organizing is not magic. We want to replicate and amplify what we're doing. Yes. This is a good takeaway. The structure of the email and making sure the call to action is at the top of the email. You got it. Oh yeah, and if you can't edit the doc, put it in the chats. Looking at the who and when in sending emails and how to focus my time in preparing them, subject lines, formatting, and frequency. Thank y'all for today. Thank you. Somebody said quality over quantity. When it comes to email list interaction, absolutely. Like who are the people, how good is their contact? But I would also say that when it comes to email list sending, you do probably want to send more email than you're sending now. So folks don't forget about you, but it also has to be things that are substantive, that have information or help or guidance for them in some way. So they don't forget you. Because again, nobody's paying as close attention to you as you are to them. 50% time spent on subject lines. Yeah. And thinking about mobile experiences of emails as well. You guys are getting some really good takeaways from this. Did anybody have any takeaways about how you're thinking about about segmenting your email lists and who should get what? We're going to be talking a lot more about that data in, I believe, session 3. So I also encourage folks, now is a good time to ask questions if we might not have hit on to it. Ask away, as they say. We can go to the next slide, I guess. So I'm going to be giving you guys a worksheet that's going to help you draft an email program plan. It's going to be, I think for a lot of your organizations, the example that you might use for this email plan would be, what is your email plan that you're going to put together either for an upcoming event or action, or maybe an email plan for building towards the election. The email program plan worksheet I'm going to share is going to be like, not about, this is all of the email for your organization for all time forever, but it's going to be about a particular campaign. Like think of a campaign you want to do some planning on, and we'll apply the sheet to that. And, sorry, I should have edited the slide. You're not doing one-on-ones. You are doing a office hours call with us on September 4th from 2 to 3 Eastern. Yes, we will change that up. But yeah, so I'll be sharing a handout that will give you some space to work on your own email plan. It's going to be a doc that you're going to like copy and type in your own organization's information in it, so you can begin working on it directly yourself. Labor Day is not, I don't think Labor Day is the 4th. Is Labor Day the 4th? I thought Labor Day was the other thing. Am I wrong here, folks?
Or is it
I
Memorial?
think, no, Labor Day is the 7th.
Okay. Oh, that's the day before the last training, I think.
Oh no, but yeah, that's the one that's the one we have scheduled. So we have a training on September 1st. So folks have a training on Thursday, 27th, on September 1st, and then we haven't set the session for the final one yet, but it would be the week of the 7th. But our next, our office hours thing is going to be the 4th. If like the entire world is going to be off September 4th, please tell me, but I didn't get the sense that everybody was going to be 4-day weekending it right now. There will also be another office hours time declared. We just have to settle on that time. Are there any, oh yeah, so here's the screenshot of what the sheet sort of looks like. It asks you to start off by thinking about what are the goals of your email program. You know, for you that might be building communications with the community to increase election day turnout, or it could be a fundraising campaign that you're starting, or it could be building turnout for a day of action that you have, be it online or off. Start with what the goals of the program are. Talk about what kinds of emails you're going to be sending. Talk about who will be getting them, the frequency, and then like looking at your email development process. So this worksheet, I think if there's multiple people who are involved in developing your email plan, as well as your organizing for digital in general, I'd recommend sort of sitting with them and getting them on board with the worksheet together. Like this could be an opportunity to reach out to some folks who don't normally think about your digital plan and to get them thinking it through with you.
And we made it.
We did. Yeah, like again, if folks, we will be here for another few minutes. So if you have questions we did not hit up, send them our way. And so on Thursday, I'll be seeing folks at noon. Thursday is going to be our big social media thing. Jamesia will be running the Movement for Black Lives Summit and will not be joining us. And we'll be cheering Jamesia on from afar. But so I'll be running solo. And we're going to have a feedback form that we're going to share with you guys that, and getting answers to some of those questions will be helpful for my preparation for Thursday. But again, I'll see you guys Thursday at noon Eastern, and it'll be a big day for Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Oh, thank you, Erica. I appreciate this. You're like one of the most awesome organizers whose work I've watched from afar, so that means a lot to see. Thank you. It really is true. So yeah, so we'll have a feedback form, and I'll sort of be checking in with folks about like your level on certain things. And it'll also just be a space for you to give us feedback on how this went. Folks might not know, but Zoom was down like an hour before our webinar, and then it came back on. So thank you, like internet, for having that not be a block. But yeah, so we'll be sending those follow-up emails to everybody. If there's anybody on this who did not receive an email from myself or Jam inviting you to this, please contact us directly to make sure that you're not missing anything. Why don't you just bother me, because her week is going to be crazy. I think we capped the participation at 3 people per organization, but that's my email if you did not get the information for this. And oh, here's something. I'm going to be creating an Action Network list in my CRM of the people who are registered for this webinar. And I will be emailing you guys ongoing communications through that CRM. That way we don't have to keep track of bounces and stuff, and won't have a ton of BCCs, etc. So keep an eye out for emails that will be coming from me. as well. Somebody just added me their email. I will type that so I can send it with them. Looking forward to future sessions. Yes. At womenengaged.org. Awesome. Okay, guys, I'm going to stick around for another couple minutes, but if you have to go, wrap it up. And we'll be sharing the video when it's done uploading and all that.
I'm actually going to stop.